The air is still, but it isn't quiet. There's a sound beneath the silence. Something that isn't wind, or dust, or machinery. It's the vibration of something waiting to ignite. A black beach, streaked with rust-red particles, under a sky not quite night, not quite day. In the middle of the frame, a girl stands with one hand in her pocket and the other tracing the outline of something invisible. She's wearing a thin white jacket, slightly too large, her hair pulled back but already loosened by the breeze. Her eyes are fixed on a metal door sunken into the landscape, sealed shut, framed in scorched titanium. It hums. She doesn't move. Neither does the door. And yet, something is already being launched. Far above, a dot crosses the atmosphere with too much precision to be accidental. Not a satellite. Not a plane. The arc is smooth, too smooth. It carves through the sky like someone drawing a question into the air. Below, the girl exhales, slow, as if she can hear it coming. The door remains closed. NNWE tend to think we are ahead. That space is a direction. That progress has a path. We imagine Mars as a goalpost. As a race, we're about to win. But what if someone already moved? Quietly. Strategically. Without the noise, without the drama, without the countdown. What if nuclear propulsion was never about speed? What if it was about inevitability? Somewhere in the periphery of your vision, there's a room you've never seen, in a country you don't think about. It has no windows, only monitors. There's a reactor core here, deep orange, breathing like a slow animal. Around it. Engineers, yes, but they don't look at the core the way SpaceX engineers do. They don't celebrate it. They don't tweet. They wait. For what? They won't say. But it's not Mars. It's something else. Something beneath it. In another scene, a girl is sitting on the floor of a capsule, no helmet, just bare skin on metal. She looks 28, maybe less. The light is pulsing above her, and she's not blinking. Her hands rest on her knees, but her fingers twitch like she's feeling something coming from the hull. You wouldn't say she's afraid, but you also wouldn't say she's calm. It's the moment before breath becomes motion, before the door finally opens. NNWE thinks SpaceX leads because it moves fast, because we see it move. Rockets rising, data streaming, Elon speaking. But there are other kinds of motion. Slow motion, strategic drift. The kind that doesn't need to show itself until it's already past you. Nuclear propulsion isn't for public eyes. It's not sexy. It's not reusable. It's dangerous. And it's quiet. But in that silence, a different kind of power grows. NNSHE stands now at the threshold of that humming door. She places her hand on it, not to open, just to listen. Her palm absorbs something. A rhythm. A low pulse. She tilts her head, and for a second, it's as if she hears words spoken from the other side. But there's no sound. Only the feeling of distance collapsing. And suddenly, it's not about SpaceX or China or Russia. It's about a deeper question. Who gets there first? Not to Mars, but to the point of no return. It starts with a map. Not of planets, but of intentions. Lines drawn in conference rooms, not in sand. Arcs of possibility etched into mission briefs, cold and precise. Orbiting ambitions no one says aloud. And then, in between those lines, the pause. The thing no one draws. The silence between attempts. That's where it begins. In N, there's this misconception that technology is neutral. That whoever builds the fastest engine wins the future. But nuclear propulsion doesn't move in straight lines. It warps the scale. It reshapes what waiting means. It turns time into a weapon, and silence into a strategy. And while SpaceX counted down in front of the world, others counted backward, inward, measuring not velocity, but control. On a vast desert flatland in Kazakhstan, beneath a network of heat-burned scaffolding, a reactor core was lowered into place 6 years ago. No press, no celebration. Only two shadows watched it disappear below the platform. One tall, one slight. The girl, perhaps 25, wore no ID, no insignia. She held a thermos in one hand, steam curling from the top, and whispered something to the metal before it vanished into its chamber. That whisper wasn't heard, but the core began to hum differently after. You imagine a race. But Mars doesn't. Mars has no concept of victory, only arrival. It receives whatever gets there first. Whether it's a rover with a billion-dollar smile or a silent drone sent without broadcast. And in that neutrality, there's a threat. Because the planet doesn't care who shows up. But we do. NNTHE real shift wasn't a breakthrough. It was a reframing. Russia and China never needed to move faster. They needed to move quieter. Away from visibility. Toward inevitability. They didn't build around charisma. They built around containment. Nuclear propulsion wasn't a spectacle for them. It was inevitability disguised as delay. Somewhere in the ocean of sand and signal, the girl stands beside a control column wrapped in frost. She breathes out, and her breath crystallizes midair. Around her, turbines idle like sleeping wolves. Her gloves rest on the panel, not pressing anything, just feeling. She's not controlling the system, she's synchronizing with it. Meanwhile, headlines flash across our screens. SpaceX announces new launch window. Elon promises reusable reactors by 2030. NASA reconsiders lunar detour before Mars. But they miss the shape of the silence behind them. The silence where another countdown has already ended. And those of us watching from glass rectangles and thumbnail updates, don't notice the shift. Because it's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's procedural, almost boring. And that boredom is the disguise. NNNU clear propulsion isn't new. It was tested in the shadows of the Cold War. Its blueprints are stitched with risk and radiation, its mathematics soaked in secrecy. But only now do we begin to treat it not as a relic, but as the only way forward. Chemical rockets are flames. Nuclear engines are gravity itself. NNN and gravity, once shifted, never warns. She's back at the platform, now inside the facility. The light is green but dim. On the screen beside her, there's no mission name, only a string of symbols. Geometric, almost mythic. She brushes a finger across one of them. It pulses once, and nothing more. Her face doesn't change, but her posture does. Something has begun. NNTHE problem isn't that SpaceX is behind. It's that they're playing a different game, one built on visibility, on hope, on momentum. But Russia and China, they don't move like that. They operate beneath the emotional architecture of the West. Not louder, not smarter, just outside in. That's why this isn't a race. It's a decoupling, a redefinition of motion, of purpose, of propulsion itself. And that's why you never saw her coming. NSHE isn't a symbol. She's not a pilot. She's not the first woman on Mars. She's an interface between the old and the unspoken. Between the technologies we show and the ones we bury under steel and earth and code. NNTHE hum you heard earlier. It's still growing. Subsonic, yes, but resonant, like a prelude, like a language older than explanation. That hum is the moment before the shift. NNTHE moment, before we understand that propulsion isn't about getting somewhere. It's about leaving something behind. 17 Niagaras per second. That's the kind of power a nuclear thermal engine can generate in vacuum thrust. Not metaphor, not exaggeration. Just a raw, quantified rupture in how we understand movement. Not explosion, translation. Not speed, continuity. And that changes everything. Inside the core, uranium doesn't burn. It boils. Not water, but hydrogen. Forced through channels so narrow they whisper. The heat climbs past 2000 Kelvin, but it doesn't scream. It purrs. Controlled violence humming in containment. Like a god you don't pray to. Just monitor. In a narrow corridor somewhere in Sichuan, lights flicker over a metal staircase spiraling downward into silence. A camera on the ceiling watches everything but records nothing. No one carries phones here. They carry memory, flesh, discipline, secrecy. The girl descends slowly, one hand brushing the wall. It vibrates under her fingers like a living ribcage. She's not supposed to be here, but the system lets her through. Not because of access. Because of something else. This engine, the nuclear one, doesn't announce itself. Its silence is its power. It doesn't roar off the pad like Falcon 9. It breathes into motion, slow, heavy, unstoppable. It's not for show. It's for crossing a threshold chemical propulsion can never reach. Continuous thrust beyond orbit. Sustained acceleration across the void. Nen. And that kind of motion doesn't make for beautiful launches. It makes for inevitability. Nen. There's no crowd, no live stream, no flag on the hull. There's just metal, heat, pressure, and purpose. And inside that purpose, not hope, not exploration, but something colder, more patient, a will that doesn't ask to be admired. And the dark chamber beneath the reactor, liquid hydrogen flows like breath. Sensors pick up no leaks, no errors, no reason to stop. The engine's design isn't just functional, it's architectural. Every vent, every seal, every line, a hymn to containment. Not to avoid destruction, but to hold it, to learn from it, to release it, only forward. NNTHE girl stands now in front of the engine's exhaust cone. It stretches like the throat of something alive. She doesn't flinch, her face lit by blue reflections, her body still. In this moment, she isn't scientist or spy. She's a reference point, a human in the presence of motion before it begins. And then, the first sequence. The hum shifts. Systems awaken. Not in bursts, but in layers. Coils warm. Channels breathe. Control lines flare in soft internal light. The core glows from within, like memory returning. NNNU, clear propulsion is not a breakthrough. It's a resurfacing, a technology mothballed by treaties and terror, now unearthed by necessity. Because chemical engines can't get us to Mars fast enough. They can't shield us from radiation long enough. They can't carry enough life to build anything new. NENBUT this engine can. Because it moves differently, not explosively. Persistently, and persistent motion reshapes perception. Distance folds. Time tilts. Missions shorten from months to weeks. Exposure drops. Feasibility sharpens. What was theoretical becomes tactile. And you begin to understand why some nations went silent. NNWHY they stopped promising. NNWHY they started listening. NN because this engine isn't just propulsion. It's position. Whoever builds it first doesn't just win a race. They redefine the path. They rewrite the physics of who gets to expand first. Who gets to design what Mars means. NNSHE walks the corridor back now, slower, not from fatigue, but from absorption. Her fingers graze a panel etched with digits, not serial numbers, but dates. Some from the past, some that haven't happened yet. Her breath condenses, then disappears. N. In the control room, no one speaks. One engineer watches the telemetry rise. Another closes their eyes. The screen doesn't flash. It pulses. Every heartbeat is a milestone. NNN01 claps. There is no success. There is only continuation. That's what a nuclear engine teaches. NNNN. There is no finish line, only direction. But what if it's already moving? NNOT launched. Not on a pad, just moving. In the way tectonic plates move. Quietly, irreversibly. While we still think we're preparing. That's the shift no one tells you about. The one you don't see in press releases or sleek promo videos. The shift that happens when your assumptions are still asleep and something beneath them starts waking up. There's a coastal facility somewhere near Vladivostok. Unmarked or mismarked, depending on which map you trust. Not industrial. Not military. Something in between. The air there is thick with salt and signal interference. And inside, a girl watches a signal repeat for the 8th time. It isn't from Earth. Not from Mars either. It's from the engine. Not the one they built. The one they tested and abandoned. But it's still sending. Still humming. Still alive. This wasn't supposed to happen. The program was shuttered. The fuel was quarantined. The data was erased. But the hum never stopped. And she was the only one who noticed. Not because she was special, but because she listened longer. And that's the real divergence. Russia and China didn't outrun SpaceX. They outweighted it. SpaceX moves in sunlight. Their breakthroughs are public, theatrical, bright. But some engines grow in darkness. They don't wait for approval or applause. They wait for timing, for necessity. For the moment, the silence breaks. And what if that moment isn't coming? Because it already came. What if the Mars race didn't start with a rocket, but with a reactor test, in a field no one was supposed to watch? What if the countdown ended 5 years ago, and we just didn't hear it? An NTHE girl walks into the signal chamber. It's not large, just a narrow room with a suspended array and a table too small for real calculations. But there's something on it. A fragment. Charred metal, folded inward like it collapsed from within. It vibrates gently, like it remembers what it was meant to become. Her hands don't shake as she lifts it, but her breath stops. And then she exhales, and the fragment responds. This is what we fear, without naming it. Not just that Russia or China are ahead, but that they moved in a different direction entirely, and we only measured our own motion. That they didn't just build a better engine, they adopted it, or discovered it, or activated it. NNTHAT, somewhere deep in their machinery, a new logic has been accepted. A logic that doesn't begin with propulsion, but with permission. Not, can we build this? But, what happens if we do? SpaceX designs for optimization. Efficiency. Modularity. But these designs, the ones humming in Siberian ground and under Chinese mountain ranges, they're built for something else. Durability, maybe. Or ritual. All and mole. If the engine isn't just a tool, but an offering. And if that's true, then the game has already changed. Bars we imagined was cinematic. Red dust, brave crews, slow-motion steps onto new soil. But the Mars that waits now might be sterile, silent, and already surveilled. Not in the future, but in the past. The kind of past we ignored because it didn't speak in English, or code, or branding. NNSHE places the fragment back on the table, but it doesn't stop humming. Her face, half-lit, doesn't change. But her eyes do. Something in them lets go. Not of the fear, but of the frame condition. This is no longer about who gets there first. It's about who already knew where to go. The floor hums differently now. Not louder, just deeper. Like a sub-bass tone under the edge of hearing. One that shifts the bones before it touches the ears. The girl stands barefoot on the reactor platform, not as an operator, not as a test subject, but as a presence. Her skin doesn't flinch at the cold. Her breath doesn't fog. She's learning the shape of this engine not by data, but by contact. This is what no one in Silicon Valley understands. Propulsion isn't just about physics. It's about intimacy. And no code, no algorithm, no mission statement prepares you for that. NNWE call it nuclear. But what moves here isn't uranium or hydrogen. It's a reordering of trust. Of what we let enter the body. The heat is real, thousands of degrees blooming in vacuum channels. But what it ignites is quieter. It's not about how far we can go. It's about how deeply we're willing to embed the machine inside the future. Inside ourselves. Because this engine doesn't just push mass. It requires submission to a new kind of duration. In the Western mind, everything is acceleration, momentum, launch. But these systems weren't built for launch. They were built for persistence, for constancy, for the unbearable continuity of thrust that doesn't end with escape velocity, but begins there. And the body has to adapt. You don't ride this engine. You inhabit it. NNSHE steps onto the central rail. The surface glows slightly, like memory stored in metal. She runs a finger across the edge, and for a moment, not more than a heartbeat, her reflection disappears. Not as an optical trick, as if she's no longer entirely here. The engine doesn't react. But something records the contact. A fluctuation in temperature, a dip in interior pressure, a breath. That's all. But that's enough. We've always thought of machines as tools, extensions of will. But this machine, it doesn't extend us. It absorbs us. It was never meant to be flown. It was meant to be joined. And that changes what exploration means. You don't arrive on Mars in this engine. You become the arrival. Am in ahead. This is the part no one says aloud. That to cross such distance, the human must change. Not physiologically, psychologically, spiritually even. Because time inside a nuclear acceleration is not linear. It's fluid. You drift, not just in space, but in awareness. Thought stretches. Language dissolves. What begins as a journey ends as reformation. In an underground lab in Gansu, a woman sits inside a rotating habitat module built to simulate deep vacuum isolation. No screens, no clocks, just sensors and a pressure diary. Her face is lit only by the glow from the filtered ceiling. For the first 7 days, she moves, writes, exercises. Then, nothing. No decline, no error, just stillness. They say she entered a different tempo. Not asleep, not awake, just synchronized. Then the engine does that, not through force, but resonance. It doesn't overpower the body, it retunes it, until fear no longer spikes and time no longer drags, until you're not traveling. Your translating doesn't end. Girl lies now inside the chamber, alone. No restraints, no voice commands, just the hum. Her hands rest on her chest, rising and falling with the reactor's core pulses. She's not afraid. That part passed earlier, when she stood on the rail. Now it's something else. Not trust, not surrender, but recognition. Western narrative would ask, who controls her? What's the mission? What's the goal? But here, those questions collapse. There is no mission, no goal, only continuation, only alignment with the thing that already moves. She isn't lost. She isn't manipulated. She is merged. And maybe that's what nuclear propulsion really reveals. Not just a new form of travel, but a new form of being. Where motion doesn't end with arrival, and identity doesn't end with agency. We're afraid of that. Afraid that propulsion could reshape what it means to be autonomous. That engines, once powerful enough, begin to carry not just bodies, but minds. This is why the programs are secret, why the footage is buried. Because what's happening here isn't just dangerous, it's transformative. And transformation isn't always a story you can control. Girl exhales once more. The chamber dims. There's no countdown, no ignition. Just the sense that forward is no longer a direction, but a condition. You think it's still about Mars. About planets and flags and first steps on red dust. But it isn't. It never was. That was the story we told to keep the old world intact. The story of expansion without transformation, of conquest without cost. But in the reflection of this engine, something else emerges. Something quieter. Something personal. In a small observation module orbiting Earth, she floats with her knees drawn up, back pressed to the cold curve of the bulkhead. Her eyes are open, but not focused. She isn't watching Earth. She's watching numbers. Not as data, but as memories. Acceleration curves, burn durations, reactor load. They shimmer in the display like rain against glass. But she isn't calculating. She's feeling. Each digit a weight, a touch, a pressure. This is what happens when machines stop talking in logic and start talking in sensation. Ninai. Ninai kwe, Nimai 2 clear propulsion alters exposure time. Not metaphorically. Literally, you spend less time in radiation zones. Less time drifting vulnerable between planets. Less time waiting to be hit. But less time changes everything. Less time means tighter cycles. Faster metabolism. Memory becomes compression. Emotion accelerates. By the time you reach the Martian orbit, you've outlived your previous version. You're not the same person who launched NNWE. Don't like to think about that. We want the heroic story. But the engine tells another one, where becoming is more painful than arriving, where you don't plant a flag, you dissolve into a pattern, a frequency. You emerge reconstituted, and no one on Earth quite recognizes your tone. NNSHE drifts away from the wall now, arms extended, fingers grazing the temperature sensors embedded in the ceiling. They're warm today, slightly above calibration. That means the engine below is humming, not in burn, but in alignment. Even here, above the planet, the pull is felt. Like weather, like hunger, like homesickness for something that hasn't happened yet. NNSHE closes her eyes, and behind them, not dreams, not memories, equations. Not written, but embodied. She knows how long a reactor will pulse before the coolant stabilizes. She knows how the interior mass shifts under lateral thrust. She knows not because she studied, but because she felt it. Inside the chamber, inside her lungs, inside the delay between one vibration and the next. This is what nuclear propulsion demands. Not faith, but contact. The kind of knowing that isn't taught. The kind that bruises, that reshapes the ribs. And this is why Russia and China moved ahead. Not because of funding, not because of genius, but because they allowed the boundary between system and self to blur. They accepted that the person who returns from Mars may not be the one who left. And they built for that. Not recovery, not therapy, integration. NN. In a station buried under the Arctic shelf, a file is opened. The screen is gray. No password. Just two numbers side by side. One is fuel mass. The other, body mass. Together they form a ratio, not for launch, for resonance. The point at which machine and passenger begin to move as one waveform. Above that threshold, coordination is impossible. Below it, indistinction begins. They've run simulations, but she was the first to feel it. NNSHE opens a panel now in her station and removes a vial. Inside, a sample of reactor condensate, collected during idle. It should be inert, but when she holds it near her chest, her heart rate slows. It's not measurable, not documented, but it's repeatable. This isn't radiation, this is coherence. The engine is teaching her a new form of pulse. And maybe that's the quiet truth underneath all of this. That propulsion isn't about where we go. It's about what listens when we move. That beyond Newton and Einstein and thrust vectors, there's another layer, where the body becomes signal, where motion isn't escape. Its invitation, NNSHE places the vial back into its sheath. Her hand lingers, not from doubt, but from grief. The realization that Earth may no longer be calibrated for her frequency. NNNOT because she's changed. NNBUT because she's become attuned. And when she speaks again, if she ever does, it won't be to us. It will be to whatever hears her, out there, when engines no longer need names. There's a room somewhere without lights, not because the power failed, but because illumination became unnecessary. The walls are black, but they don't feel cold. They feel absorptive, like they're listening. In the center of the room there's a sphere. Matte, smooth, no seams. Inside it, motion. Not spinning, not vibrating. Just becoming. The girl stands a few meters away, not as an operator, not as an observer, but as a reflection. Her silhouette is the only shape in the space that still has softness. And yet she doesn't seem out of place. She's barefoot again. No helmet. No interface. She doesn't move. But something inside the sphere does. This is the end. Though there is no collapse. No silence. Just a convergence. The engine is no longer waiting. It doesn't need launch towers or countdowns or fanfare. It's not made for that. It was never theatrical. It was inevitable. All this time, we mistook noise for progress. But propulsion, real propulsion, doesn't scream. It absorbs. It takes in the past, the waste, the velocity of mistakes, and it turns it into trajectory. Without apology. Without hesitation. NNSHE places her hand on the wall, and the wall pulses once. Not visibly, but the pulse travels into her. The skin at her wrist tightens. Her breath shallows. Not fear, not awe. Something closer to understanding. The kind of understanding that doesn't arrive as a sentence, but as a temperature shift in the spine. And here it is, the final question. The one we've been circling for hours, pretending we were asking about nations, about technologies, about who's ahead and who's behind. But it was always more intimate than that. Because this engine, this thing buried in facilities we'll never visit, pulsing beneath continents we've learned to fear. It isn't asking who gets to reach Mars. It's asking, what are you willing to become in order to arrive? And that question is not scientific. It's cellular.dat-nia. Because this engine isn't just physical. It's philosophical. It carries not just bodies, but concepts. It warps time, yes. But also permission. Memory. Selfhood. It asks you to compress, to adapt, to release identity like vapor into vacuum. NNSHE steps forward now, toward the sphere. Her eyes are open, but they don't seek. They receive. The matte surface begins to shift, not with light, but with contour. A faint pattern emerges. Not language, not code. Something older, like the inside of a lung, or the surface of a planet, seen from too close. NNWE used to think arrival was a moment, a touchdown, a flag, but nuclear propulsion shows us otherwise. It shows us that arrival is a phase transition, that the person who lands is not the person who launched, that Mars is not a place you conquer, it's a filter, a threshold, a mirror that only reflects what survived the acceleration. NNSHE touches the sphere. Her fingers don't sink in, but something else does. Not mass, not thought. Something quieter. She doesn't blink. The room doesn't react. And yet, across an invisible channel, the reactor far below registers a spike, not in temperature, but in synchrony. Something aligns, and in that alignment, a new idea emerges, NNNOT. Where do we go next? NNNOT, who goes? NNBUT. What if the engine chooses? NNNOT, politically. Not algorithmically, but organically. Based on coherence, based on receptivity, based on whether what touches it is capable of entering the next rhythm without shattering, not canon. That's what she's become. Not a passenger, not a pioneer, but a proof of resonance.NNN, and maybe, just maybe, that's why SpaceX is behind. Not because they lack power, but because they still believe the engine is an instrument, not an organism. And outside, the sky begins to shift. It's not dawn, not eclipse, just a reframing of contrast. As if the atmosphere, too, is preparing for a different mode of perception. NNSHE turns once, not to leave, not to confirm, just to be seen one last time by the old world. And in that turn, something completes. The pulse slows. The sphere stabilizes. The hum fades. NNBUT, nothing stops. NNNOT really, NN because maybe that was the final ignition. Not combustion. Coalescence. What if the engine was never about distance at all? What if it was always about frequency? And what if, just once, we matched it?